She spent weeks sewing her prom dress by hand. Every stitch was perfect, every fold a dream. But on the night she was supposed to wear it, Tamara Fields never made it to prom or home. For 20 years, her disappearance was a painful mystery. No suspects, no answers, just a mother with an empty hallway and a dress hanging in silence. Then, during a routine motel demolition, a janitor pulled something from inside a wall. A sky-blue dress, crumpled, stained, and stitched with the initials T. Fields. This discovery would reopen an entire town's wounds and uncover secrets hidden for decades. Tamara Fields was the kind of girl everyone remembered, not because she stood out in a crowd, but because she looked you in the eye and made you feel like you mattered. In her small Georgia town, prom night was a rite of passage, and for Tamara, it was supposed to be her moment. She designed her own dress powder blue with a soft satin trim, simple, elegant, and stitched with love. Her mother Diane helped her fit the final hem on the morning of May 12, 2003. They took a photo. Tamara smiled into the camera holding the dress on a hanger like it was a promise of everything good to come. But that evening she never showed up. Not at the pre-prom dinner, not at the school gymnasium decorated in gold, not even at the bus stop she said she'd be walking to. Tamara vanished before prom night even began. Search parties scoured the town for days. The woods, the creek, empty barns. Everyone pitched in. But nothing turned up. Not a phone, not a shoe, not a note. Police questioned classmates, teachers, neighbors, anyone who might have seen her. A few students claimed they saw a blue dress near a silver pickup truck by the old Palmetto Motel. But that building had been closed for months, condemned after a fire in room 6. With no surveillance footage and no sign of Tamara, the lead went cold. 20 years passed. Her photo stayed on the wall in Diane's house, aging with the frame. A girl frozen in time, a story no one could finish, until one fall afternoon in 2023 when contractors arrived to demolish the old Palmetto Motel. The demolition crew was supposed to begin with the east wing, the part that had suffered the most smoke damage. As they tore through drywall and pulled back insulation, one worker hit something solid. At first they thought it was just old plumbing. But then, tangled in broken sheetrock, a glint of soft blue appeared, a bundle of fabric, folded tightly, pressed between support beams. They pulled it out. It was a dress, powder blue, torn at the seams, discolored by age, and stitched into the inside lining barely visible in faded thread T. Fields. Police were called immediately. Investigators reopened the case. The discovery made local news by that evening. The dress was rushed to forensics, and suddenly a decades-old ghost story was breathing again. Diane Fields, now older, her hair fully gray, received a knock at her door she never expected. A detective stood there holding the evidence bag. Inside was the dress she helped her daughter sew. Except this time, it had blood on it. DNA analysis confirmed it was Tamara's. But it also revealed something else, a second profile male unknown. Within days, a full excavation of the Palmetto Motel began. Behind the drywall, hidden deep within the wall's cavity, they found a bracelet. Tamara's. The one she wore in her prom photo, still clasped shut. Then, a small gold locket. Inside, 2 photos, one of Tamara and one of a man in his mid-30s, smiling. No one recognized him, until a retired deputy called in. "That's Vince Palmer," he said. "Used to be the maintenance guy at the Palmetto. Quiet type, kept to himself." Records showed Vince had disappeared in late 2003, just months after Tamara vanished. His file had been closed, assumed relocation, but no family ever filed a missing persons report. And then came the final clue. Behind room 6's sink, now fully removed crime scene investigators found a trapdoor painted over multiple times. Beneath it, a crawl space, no wider than a coffin. Inside bones, human, small, unmarked. DNA would later confirm the unthinkable Tamara's remains. The town grieved all over again. Candles lit, vigils held, flowers left at the motel's chain-link fence. But questions remained. Why the dress? Why the wall? And why had Vince Palmer kept her locket? The town of Willow Creek had seen tragedy before, fires, accidents, even a bank robbery once. But nothing like this. Nothing that buried itself into the brick and mortar of its buildings. Detectives revisited every document tied to the Palmetto Motel. Blueprints, work orders, visitor logs, though most had long since decayed or vanished. What they found was eerie. Vince Palmer, the maintenance man, last seen in late 2003, had full access to every room. He lived in the rear cottage, a small one-bedroom shed that still stood behind the main building, rotted with time. In that cottage, investigators found what appeared to be a shrine. Newspapers, photos of Tamara clipped from her school newsletter, a dried-out rose boutonniere labeled with her prom date's name, who had been cleared of suspicion 2 decades ago. But the most disturbing thing was the journal. Water-damaged pages torn, but enough remained legible. She smiled at me today. I fixed her locker last fall. She said thank you. No one else sees her, not the way I do. If I can't have that night with her, maybe I can keep it still, forever. It was a twisted echo of obsession, and it changed everything. Tamara hadn't been abducted by a stranger. She had been taken by someone in her world, a man whose name she may not have even known, but who had watched her, followed her, idolized her. Tamara Fields was brought in to identify the objects. She stared at the locket for over 5 minutes before speaking. It was mine. I gave it to her when she turned 16. The pain in her voice wasn't shock anymore. It was quiet devastation. The press descended. True crime podcasts scrambled. The Palmetto Motel became a pilgrimage for amateur investigators and internet sleuths. But for Willow Creek, it was something much darker, a wound that reopened every time someone mentioned the dress in the wall. The school where Tamara had studied issued a statement. The gymnasium where prom had been held now included a framed dedication in her memory. But it was what came from the motel that changed things forever. The forensic team discovered during structural mapping that Vince had created multiple hide spaces throughout the property. One beneath the floorboards of room 4, another inside the maintenance crawl space. Each contained items tied to different missing person cases across neighboring counties. Jewelry, scarves, one shoe, a Polaroid. Suddenly, Tamara's story became something bigger. They weren't just looking at one victim. They were looking at the pattern. Vince Palmer, quiet and unnoticed, may have been responsible for more disappearances than anyone had imagined. His body was never found. Only a burned ID badge, one tooth, no official confirmation of death. Rumors sparked. Did he die in the fire in room 6, or had he used it to vanish? The sheriff at the time, now retired, spoke at a town hall. We missed it. We all missed it. The signs were there. The motel should have been searched deeper. And that raised the question no one wanted to ask. How many lives could have been saved if anyone had listened back then? Tamara's childhood best friend, now a mother of 2, agreed to speak on record. Her name was Marlene. Tammy was the brightest part of our class. She brought cupcakes for teachers. She could sketch dresses like she was already in fashion school. That night, something left our town when she didn't show. She paused. I think she knew something was off. The week before prom, she said someone had been watching her at the bus stop. We all laughed it off. She stopped smiling. I haven't laughed since. Diane refused all media interviews. Instead, she wrote a letter, not to the press, not to the police, to Tamara. I found your dress, sweetheart. It was where no one ever thought to look, but I always believed you were close, that you hadn't left me. And now I know I was right. I will wear the locket again. And I will tell your story not because of how it ended, but because of how much joy you brought to every room you ever entered. You never made it to prom, Tammy, but you will always be remembered as the girl we were all so proud of. And I will never let them forget you. She folded the letter, placed it inside the frame of Tamara's final photo, and hung it back on the wall. But this time she added a candle beneath it. And every night since she lit it. Weeks after the dress was found, the demolition of the Palmetto Motel was halted. Not because of bureaucracy, but because people started coming. Candles were left by the chain-link fence. Handwritten notes tucked through the rusted gaps. Someone painted a mural. Tamara's face smiling in soft blue with wildflowers blooming from her hair. Underneath the words, she should have danced. It became a place of mourning, a place of reckoning. School groups visited. Survivors of other cold cases left tokens of their own grief. A woman from 2 towns over pinned her missing sister's photo beside Tamara's. They had gone to the same summer camp. And slowly what had been a forgotten building turned into a shrine of voices finally being heard. Diane, ever private, walked the site at dawn one morning. Alone. She carried a single prom corsage white rose baby's breath. She placed it where room 6 used to be. She whispered something no one else heard, and she smiled for the first time in 20 years. A task force was formed in the months that followed. Cold cases dating back to 1999 were reopened. Missing teens whose names had faded from bulletin boards were returned to conversations. What began with a prom dress sparked something national. Legislation was proposed in Georgia. The Fields bill designed to require full structural investigations of condemned buildings connected to active missing persons cases. It passed with bipartisan support. Tamara's story was read aloud on the floor of the state Senate. Her name was entered into public record not as a victim, but as a catalyst. Meanwhile, at the high school, a new tradition began. Each spring before prom, seniors walked the Fields line, a path lined with photos of past students, candles, and letters. At the end of the walkway stood a replica of Tamara's blue dress, preserved and displayed with care. Students were asked to write one promise on a card to protect each other, to speak up, to walk home together, to notice. The school counselor who started the tradition explained, "We don't teach safety enough. We teach math. We teach history. But this teaches humanity." Tamara's story made its way to national media. Documentaries were proposed, podcast interviews requested. Diane declined most except one. A quiet sit-down with a female journalist who had also lost her sister years ago. The interview wasn't sensational. It was intimate. Diane said, "I'm not here to make Tamara famous. I'm here to make sure no other mother waits 20 years to find the truth in a wall." The clip went viral. People around the country began checking condemned buildings near long-forgotten sites. In one case, a tip led to a breakthrough in Arkansas. In another, remains were uncovered near an abandoned water tower in Ohio. Tamara's dress didn't just speak for her. It spoke for all the girls who never made it to prom. Marlene, Tamara's childhood best friend, started a scholarship in her name. It wasn't big, $500, but it came with a letter. "This is for someone who's creative kind and not afraid to wear the dress they really want, even if it's different." In a quiet moment, 1 year after the motel's discovery, Diane returned to the garden behind her home. There she planted a tree, a weeping cherry, just as Tamara had once asked. She placed a small plaque at the base. "For Tamara, you were supposed to bloom here, but now the world blooms because of you." 6 months after the motel demolition stopped, the town council voted to preserve the site not as a tourist attraction, but as a memory garden. They tore down the remaining walls, replaced the blacktop with stone paths, and planted low wildflowers, bluebells, and daisies. Tamara's favorites. A sculpture stood at the center, an empty pair of dance shoes made of steel and copper resting at the foot of a mirror. Etched on the glass, "What we forget, we risk repeating." They called it the last step. Local therapists began offering free sessions to women who had lived in Willow Creek during the early 2000s. Many came forward with stories they'd buried. One said, "Vince offered me a ride home once. I said no. I thought it was nothing. But I kept thinking about it after." Another said, "I didn't even know Tamara personally. But after she vanished, my parents wouldn't let me walk anywhere alone. My whole adolescence felt locked down." It became clear Tamara's disappearance didn't just hurt her family. It rewrote the adolescence of a generation of girls. Even former officers came forward anonymously at first. One confessed that the motel had always felt off, but it was too low priority to push further. Another admitted the original investigation was rushed under pressure to produce clean optics. One rookie cop from 2003 said, "I found a torn piece of fabric in the alley beside room 4. I bagged it, logged it, but the bag went missing the next week. I thought I imagined it." At a community forum titled "The Cost of Silence," Diane Fields stood to speak. She said, "My daughter's dress was hidden in a wall for 20 years, but it wasn't just drywall and nails that kept it there. It was a culture that said, don't make a scene, don't dig too deep, don't disturb the quiet." She looked around the room now filled with teenagers, teachers, council members, journalists, and survivors. "I won't let silence be her legacy." Elsewhere, a woman named Gloria sent a letter. She had been Tamara's school counselor, one of the few adults Tamara had confided in. In the letter she wrote, "I remember the day she showed me a rough sketch of her dress. She was nervous it was too grown up. I told her it was beautiful, and that she was allowed to shine. I never forgot her smile that day." She ended with a haunting line, "I've spent 2 decades asking myself, If I had asked her more questions, would she still be here? National awareness campaigns grew. Find the missing her dress was enough, Tamara told us. These weren't just hashtags, they became movements. Girls shared their own stories, times they felt watched, dismissed, silenced. Boys were encouraged to listen to unlearn what they thought was harmless. Parents began talking to their children about boundaries earlier. In one viral video, a group of students walked out of school wearing blue dresses in solidarity. One sign read, "We wear her memory. We protect her truth." Tamara's sketchbook was recovered from a box in her mother's attic. It had survived the years in near-perfect condition. Inside, dozens of designs, not just prom dresses, wedding gowns, stage costumes, workwear for nurses, pages and pages of fabric dreams. Diane had them scanned, digitized, and published into a hardcover collection called If I Had Made It. It sold over 10,000 copies in 6 weeks. Fashion schools began using it as an inspiration text. In the foreword, Diane wrote, "Tamara never made it to prom, but now her ideas walk the runways of the world. The motel may be gone, but in its place stands a promise that even if justice takes decades, even if the truth lives behind walls, even if the dress is buried, the girl is not forgotten." Tamara Fields never got her dance, but because someone found her dress, she found her voice, and that voice lit the way for thousands more. If her story touched you, we want to hear from you. What part of her journey stayed with you the most? Leave a candle emoji in the comments to honor those still waiting to be found. Like this video if you believe silence is never the end of the story. Subscribe to Tim Stories for more real-life mysteries and legacies that deserve the light. And please share this video with someone who believes that memory is justice, because no girl should have to disappear to be remembered. Until next time, stay kind, stay aware, and above all, stay human.